Hey everybody, it's Pat the Sales Engineer again. This time we're going to be talking about something we all end up doing, which is the sales call. It's more aptly called the sales meeting. You may wish to call it a call, that's fine. And this is something that I think bears a little bit of detail because we find too often everybody comes unprepared if we don't interfere, if we don't keep things on track, especially with the reps, right? They like to play it loose and free. So the first thing about getting into the sales meeting is what you're getting used to me calling step zero. Step zero is that step before you actually take the first step. Preparation, if you will, getting ready. What are you going to do? Scripts, that kind of thing. And one of the things that I created over the years to help with this, because I couldn't find any consistency in what people were doing, was the meeting event planner. So there are, this is one of several devices, if you will, that I've created with my methodologies over the years. And the meeting event planner is kind of what it sounds like, right? It's a meeting, it's an event, you're going to plan it. The meeting event planner, though, is actually pretty interesting from the standpoint that the meeting event planner is an outline, like a time-based outline with checkboxes next to each artifact that we would either supply or require. It could be a verbal artifact, it could be an actual piece of paper, whatever it happens to be, or whatever else we're supposed to get. The meeting event planner can be multiple pages. It could be either text, bulleted items, objectives, a freeform section, and allows for a listing or a counting of attached documents, right? So let's say we got some other documentation. We need to make sure that we're accounting for that and that it exists as an artifact of the actual meeting itself. Things like your notes about, or just regular notes from everybody, but also notes taken from attendees, like the information on who was there, the name, the title, the email, biz cards, document each may have provided. And it's meant to kind of say, well, we anticipated this list, we got this list of people, right? There's always a last minute change or something. All of this stuff would accompany the meeting event planner, and it'll be, compiled into a report in whatever sales process software that you're using. It could be just the actual papers and copies of the papers or whatever. A few things happen in here as well. I like using cue cards, and I guess that's a bad way of putting it, but I would have, like, the sales rep would have a card, and the things that I would give him is maybe, or her, would be a list of things to touch on, things not to forget, things that we need to get, whatever. And they could have a nice little 3x5 where they could just have it with them. It fits in your pocket. And they could remember to check off these little things or get to each of them, so that at the end, when we go to the meeting event planner, we can say, okay, what are the things we absolutely could not leave this meeting without? Okay, here they are. Did we get them? Yes, no. Where are they? So a lot of being a sales engineer is kind of keeping everybody in line and trying to get repeatable methodologies so that we're not working any harder than we have to, helping the reps get the deals closed so we can all get paid. So it offers a bit of consistency in a very inconsistent group of sales reps, and also people contributing who might not be on these sales calls all the time, right? You get the brass coming in or whatever you want to do on our end. So they're extremely good for that. You'll find a lot of folks, they just don't want to cooperate, and they don't want anything loosey-goosey. They don't really want anything to be written down. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it goes. Now, this is for the pre-meeting. The meeting event planner, I'm actually going to go through a video and talk about exactly how to make one, make it yours. And I just want to give this high level of kind of what the meeting event planner is. This is the preparation for the meeting itself, but there are a few things that occur before this meeting that the sales engineer is involved in directly. And they all are still step 0. Okay. We're going to go through this again with dead markers. Oh, okay. 2 down. 3. Hey. We're still on step 0. So, I want to talk about 2 areas of preparation. The first is, let's call it untargeted. And I'm going to loosely say public, or at least unrestricted distribution. The next is going to be targeted. And this is usually prospect or deal. Maybe not specific isn't the best word, but it's what people say. So deal specific. I think deal relevant is a better word. Whatever. I'm not gonna go crazy about it. The first is concerns itself with things that the public would see, right? So the public is, let's say in the case of the public, what we're always looking at is what we always call the perfect prospect, okay? The perfect prospect is the prospect that we're looking for that is a 100% match with what we do, what we're selling, what services. They've done a lot of confusion, education. They're ready to go. Then they come to they could be not just the public, but it also could be, and I'm going to put semi in brackets here, targeted vertical, right? Now we've all heard the term vertical. Vertical is just one way, stovepipe, whatever, to indicate some people call it industry. Some people call it the grouping or the category of either what we do or what they do. In other words, what we're selling overlapping with what they need or what they do. All right, so we and they. Back to Pat's triads. So don't think that this is strictly for public consumption. It's all out there in web page, public, on you have no idea who's seeing it, who's using it. It can also be targeted for particular verticals. And you see this with software that's got a wide base of applicability. This could be CRM, BI, anything with ERP is a good example. And then along there, we have these verticals that this software can apply to. So it might be insurance, it could be construction, it could be medical, it could be technology and research, it could be any of these, but the software tells a different story for each one. And that's why I mean a semi-targeted vertical. You know, we always have to be careful, and I think marketing and advertising people that we end up helping are very keen to try not to be painted into one of these boxes, because then, oh, your software does insurance. Well, we're not an insurance company, so that's just not going to work out, right? See, they're taught to be general but specific, and that's the hardest thing about selling, is not knowing who's going to look at your stuff before they contact you. So with that in mind, Once they have, we do something called qualification, right? So qualification is a gigantic topic. It's the meat of what a sales engineer does. And we assist those doing qualification in such a way that we try to guide them into doing it efficiently and sell what we do and what we sell, and not just sell what anybody wants and hope for the best. That's back to our old writing the check and cashing it and all that. So the next angle, and this is all prior to the meeting, because this is what's setting up your meeting, the expectations, right, is the targeted, prospect or deal specific. So along the same lines of a vertical, now we know something about this. And usually what happens is, like in Untargeted, we might do, let's see, we could do short videos, how-to, your 5 to 10 minute ones. You can do the product or service data sheets, right? We're always writing the data sheets and product specs and stuff, giving them to advertisers and to marketing. And we do things like the weekly webinars. I'm a big fan of this. The weekly webinars, where you get out there, usually like a Monday morning, or Monday afternoon rather, sometime 1, 2 o'clock, and you get them still fresh. They haven't been beaten down by the week yet. And you can choose a topic, 30 to 45 minutes. People have a chance to, be on the webinar and ask questions. You can go through various things. Really great to do these live ones, and then basically record them and dress them up a little bit, frame them out, like, you see my little thing down here. And it promotes the product really, really well. It shows that you're a responsive and communicative company. The other things that we do for here, before I wanted to get this before I moved on to Targeted, I forgot. We do a ton of graphics and animation. Now, you may see your role as a sales engineer as somebody who just goes out and does demos. I don't think this semi-quasi course and what I talk about is doing that. If that's all you want to do and you have a job and not a career, that's great. Go ahead. Have fun. Just do demos and, your life will be wonderful. This is what I'm talking about, is for people who are rock stars or who want to be rock stars. And that's absorbing and achieving and learning everything there is to do with what we do. And a lot of that is, you've got to know presentation software cold. You've got to know all the graphic software that's out there cold, animation, 3D rendering, all that jazz. You've got to know all of it, because you can bring all that to bear to really make a difference in a dog and pony show, or just if you're the only person that they're talking to, it just blows people away. And that's kind of what we should really be trying to do. If you're not, that's great. These aren't for you. Go off and watch other videos that talk about sales engineering as being a sales rep. So the semi-targeted stuff that I was talking about, let me give you a good example of this. A good example is with, for example, VARs. They could be VARs, what we're calling loosely partners. There's a whole other thing I could do about that. And we're talking about vendors. Now, I won't even get into the different relationships you can have with vendors. But one of the things that I realized that I was doing a lot for folks like this was, for example, I worked at Westbrook Technologies, which was a 100% reseller model. And so the VARs, they had more than just us in the toolbox. They could pull anybody out, anybody's software, whatever they thought. So I spent a lot of time on the road training value-added resellers to promote our solution over others, simply because I gave them a lot of touch and feel. I would just go in and I'd be there for like 2 days, wherever their office was. And we would just do kind of calls that you're working on. How would you normally use our software? Hey, let's configure it. Let's go on a sales call. And I would go with them, and a call that they maybe weren't sure what would fit, or they already knew that we would fit. Partners, this is mostly partners, and they're all in margin, these two. they're concerned with the product data sheets and stuff. They just want to be able to have something, a leave behind that is relevant to what they're doing. And that's why we talked about the verticals. Don't want to stray too far off of this. We're talking about sales meetings here. Training. I've even done support calls, like, a tiered support. So somebody says, well, I was out here, I was trying to get this working, I can't get it working, your support, ticketing system, whatever. They give me a call. Boom, I'm on their machine. We're conferenced in, and I'm right there at the customer's site virtually, going through whatever it takes to make it work, make the demo or the pilot or the proof of concept work, things like that. So you can be on a sales call, you could do branded collateral, you could do all these things as just a simple vendor, but it's all step zero. It's all before the formal call. You're generating interest, as I like to put it. The level of interest you're trying to create, manage, and improve all the time. So with that aside, it just occurred to me that I completely blew all that stuff off. With that in mind, let's talk about targeted. This could be either for the deal, for the actual meeting, the prospect itself, or something that is more, here's what we'd like to be able to do for you. I don't know what you could call these. We do material on these clients that we'd have that had millions invested with us, and we were just trying to generate interest. And so what I would do is I would do what ifs. And these papers, presentations, because people don't like to read, were more like imagine your system this way. And I would draw it all out, and I would have a quick, 1 or 2 page slick format, and that was it. And we would just float it to them, and it was something that could be used to discuss, right? You got to grow those accounts. You got to get new ones, acquire, and you've got to nurture those existing accounts, because they're the ones in retention that are paying the bills today. So keeping those accounts, please don't forget about them. Water them, feed them. They need that a lot. So one of the things I like to do for targeted is I like to get my reps in the habit of having templates, and I create these. If you're not a VBA programmer in Office products, especially Excel and Word, pick up a book. You really need to know how to do this. These are the kind of things, templates, especially in Microsoft documentations, are the kind of things where you ask questions, right? A form pops up, or it looks just like a regular form that you'd write in Visual Studio, and it maybe asks a couple of questions. What's the name of the prospect? What are they interested in? Check, 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 check. And from that comes a Word document. And this is all inside Word, by the way. You don't have to leave Word or Excel, whatever it is. And you get section 1, section 2, section 3, etc. The document is already filled out. Header, footer. You really got to learn how to do the headers and footers. That's not easy to do. And the body is all filled in, macros or placeholders, with the information that you asked the rep initially. And bam, out comes your proposal. Out comes your statement of work. Out comes your letter of intent format. Your meeting event planner. All this stuff comes out of just simple questionnaires that generate the documents. You don't want to go out and have a template. Unfortunately, the reps do this way too often. They have their last deal, right? And then they turn around and say, well, I'm just going to take that last document and change names and do whatever. I've seen some that thought they were clever by having a one of everything, right? And they would copy it and then delete the different sections. They would always forget the name, putting in the old prospect into the new prospect name. They would get the dates wrong. They would get please don't do that. Don't let your reps get in that habit. Get them out of the habit. And the only way you can get them out of that habit is to make it more desirable for them to use your method than theirs. Make it so it's easier, better, faster, whatever, makes more money, more repeatable to use your method. And the reason we do it like this is because each of these template sections that are created come from a cache of actual documents that we can update all the time. So the next time somebody has something they need, oh, guess what? The name of that product changed. Okay, there you go. The next template is there. You can call this, by the way, from SharePoint if you happen to use SharePoint as a CRM or a DMS, whichever way you like to look at it. And this is a fabulous, fabulous way to do things. I think if anybody's interested, I'll do like a technical mini lecture about how you create one of these, just a real basic, here's your fields, here's your whatever, so you can go nuts and go have fun with it. Enable programming? Oh, geez, now I'm forgetting the name of the tab. In your tabs under Word and Excel, developer. Enable the developer tab, go into the developer tab, either open up Visual Basic or, create a macro if you have to, type in some stuff, save the macro, see what the commands were. And along with your regular programming, this should be part of your resume. This is really what sets you aside, is the ability to make really powerful tools. And I've got a bit of a portfolio of what these all look like, but basically templates. So along with that is a kind of template called a proposal generator. And a proposal generator is not something you have a sales admin ask you a series of questions that you fill out and then they type something up. A proposal generator is literally just like this. Which products, what are we going to charge, or pull in from the database as you're doing this, the default charges for them, have them modified and edited from there. It's not meant to be, these templates, the actual final document. It's meant to be damn near all of it, like it's already done for you. The meeting event planner can be done like this, as well as the tools for the meeting event planner. Remember we talked about how the meeting event planner, which kind of needs its own little video too, is a tool that is designed to line everything up. So you might say, this one questionnaire might have the things you want to tell everybody and what their roles are. Well, it would spit out those 3x5s in Word ready to be printed. It could, it could do a million other things. Prepare everybody for the meeting, I guess, is the best way to look at it. Now, the other is another tool that I haven't talked about yet in any of these lectures is either the PLC or the LOC. I prefer PLC because I don't do any PLC programming, but LOC sounds like location. It's the percent likelihood of closing or the likelihood of closing. Okay? There's a tool that I use, and it's different for every company, but essentially it's a sales tool for the sales manager and for the sales engineer to decide whether we're going to cut bait or fish, where it basically puts out a big old percent based on the opportunity, what is known or unknown about the opportunity. How many of this? Do we have access to that? What is the date? And then, it configures. So a lot of calculations done. This is done in Excel, but it's all done automatically. So basically they have one sheet and it asks very basic questions, and then a percent shows up here. I just do it in Excel because it's easier, and it's nice because it's built for calculations instead of Word. It's kind of hacky in Word. But remember, with a Word template, we can also pull in worksheets from a workbook from Excel into Word. More on that when we start talking about templates. So templates for the percent likelihood of closing, the PLC, likely. Also, LOI is very similar to LOC, rather, to LOI, which is a percent of level of interest. And so it might get people confused. So I tend to do it like this: percent likelihood of closing. Now, going kind of fast, excuse me about that, but quite a bit to cover. Now, so far, if you remember, I'll get into targeted here. Maybe I'll do that next. Kind of what we were just talking about with creating the errata is targeted. It's about the opportunity. It's the template for this and that. But as untargeted, we didn't know about this opportunity ahead of time, right? So we made all those templates, simply filling them out. I mean, I got to make these drop dead easy and super accurate because contracts hates it when the reps are out there using something a year old and come to find out legal has moved on, or the stuff that they're doing, legal doesn't approve. So they may be even like quoting the wrong thing. Like, we don't even make it. They don't care. The reps just want to get people interested and have them sign things. The folks in product development, the folks in legal, the folks in marketing and advertising, they really care. And so I pull documents from, or the data from documents that are in these various departments, pulling them in when I make these proposals. A rep will constantly use, I'm sorry, they just do, old stuff that they've reworked. Hey, it worked for me. It's my lucky socks. It's my lucky lipstick. It's whatever. And we have to really keep on them about this. It's not productive. It's wrong. You'll end up chasing your tail afterward because they wrote a check that we can't cash. This is why I had to develop all this. It may seem like an awful lot before the sale for step 0, but if you're dealing in big ticket software, those mistakes really, really sting. And sometimes people call us like solutions engineers. We're supposed to be crafting that solution. When the reps are out there using stuff that they know they shouldn't, trying to not get us involved in the first call, which is what they should always do, by the time you do get involved and you find out what they've committed to, you have to come in as the bad guy and say, no, you guys, sorry, we don't really do that. Right? Because the rep is looking for the quick hit and moving on. They just want the money in the register, get their commission and go. That's the way they're incented. It's the way they're paid. That's what their plans are. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way things are. So what are they going to do? Everything and anything to just get to that point and move on. They're not paid to do anybody else's job, and they try, like anything, to get other people to do theirs. So now we're talking about vendor, hopefully. I think we pretty much covered targeted, except for one thing. One of the things that I haven't mentioned in my methodologies, yet rather, in talking about the 5 Ds, right? So you know Pat's 5 Ds, which are really 6. Which are describe, which is where we are now, right? We're kind of like in requirements, or you might call the meeting itself the requirements. Define, where we basically design things, or sorry, not design, where we define. So we give it like, I don't know. I had somebody once tell me speeds and feeds. Call it details. Now I've got blog entries and lectures on this, so I don't want to get too detailed here. Design, this is basically the proposal, and deliver, and finally debrief. Okay, now we've been through these in other videos. I say that there are 5, but really 6, because if they don't know what they want, we have to go out to a 6th D called discover, and then come back, right? So it's almost like a 0 or a 6 or whatever. Many times, the more sure, and I've said this before, the more sure someone is of what they want, the less likely it is that they're correct. So with this in mind, with these 5/6, a methodology I have for each of these. Now, I've never talked about this before. There are another 3 Ds. Now, I do methodologies like this with horses because horses are easy to remember. Okay? So you got your little horse here with his big old feet. And horses are ways to remember things. The 5 Ds, describe, define, design, deliver. You know, with my methodology, everything's going to begin with a D. Well, actually, what we're doing in here is a combination, step 0 and step 1 of the discover and describe. However, each of these Ds, can I just have another color that isn't dry yet? Fantastic, orange. They each have their own set of 3 Ds. These 3 Ds are just like these other ones that you can use in projects and sales. This can apply to anything that you're responsible for. These are universal as well, and they are how you get information or execute the steps that we're talking about, which are qualification. Okay, so these 2 are to do with qualification, and each of the 3 has my 3 Ds, which are declared, discovered, is this a mistake to use this orange? And the last one, my favorite, deduced. Now, each of these, they each use these 3. I hope that's, if it's not clear that I said it, fine. So what does this mean? For each one of these steps, what do we have in the process of qualification? Declared. We have what it was that they told us, right? So declared is what they think they need. Discovered is what we think they need. We did our research. We asked questions. We inspected equipment. We did surveys. We went through all the assessments, and I could go on about just that part, but I won't. It's okay. Don't get worried. And deduced, my favorite, is what I took from both of them. So deduced is what I had to figure out. So out of all this, there is this part over here, which is deduction. Now, I draw it like this because normally what people will do, just regular old people, is they'll say, well, all you have to do, Pat, is figure out what we do and what they do, and boy, there's the sales in the middle. There's your big old dollar sign. It's not true. It's naive to look at it like that. There are things that we discover that we didn't know, they didn't tell us, that apply to the deal. For example, you have yet to talk to the owners, the business owners. You have yet to talk about the users, the managers, the folks that are pitching in on this deal. You may have talked to the project manager of what they were told to do, but you haven't talked to the buyer yet. Also, your research can reveal things about what they want to do that they're not aware even exists. So they would say, oh, we need this over here because that's what's possible. We know what's possible. But yet we turn around and go, you don't do this. You make shoes. You don't know what's possible. I know what's possible. And more over here is possible because that's what we do, or, it's half. And a deduction is made as to what's going to contribute to this that neither one of us knew. So I didn't come out and say it about my product, what my product can do, what we think we can do. They think they need. It's a deduction. And it's more powerful than this blending of what we think we do and what they think we do. This is another part of the triads that you'll see a pretty long blog post about, and I think I did one video a while ago about it. It's one aspect of it. So don't discount the fact that you don't know everything. Don't discount the fact that they don't know what they're talking about. I think we talked about this when we talked about the root of sales, where sales comes from, how a consumer, a prospect, perfect or not, will want to appear to know what they're talking about so you don't try to snow them. You don't try to pull the wool over their eyes and all these other things. They exaggerate things that they think are unique statements, cutting edge, that have no relevance, right? So you play that game where you're like, they say something, well, we think we should use this and it's the standard and everything. There's no way in the world they're going to use it, right? So what do? Do you stand in front of the bull and say, no, you're wrong? Or do you say, actually, that's a really good point. We hadn't even thought about it, but yeah, there's a lot of lineup there. And here's how I think that's gonna work out. And just moving with it, right? Never stand in front of the bull. Never say no, qualified yeses. You hear me say these mantras and these horses all the time. Why? Because they work. And if I don't make them into horses, you're not going to remember them like the D's here. So in each of discover and describe, discover is actually part of our untargeted, right? Because I didn't know anything about this opportunity when I started making all the materials, the public stuff, the trade show animations and handouts and such. I didn't know any of that stuff, but yet I'm also going to use these three in step one or phase one or stage one when it comes to describing, because I'm going to be in this sales meeting and you'll hear people say, you do 30% of the talking, whatever. It never works out that way. I mean, it's great that people write down these percentages, but in the real world, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. Why? In short, let me make this very short. The reps will walk in thinking they're going to control the meeting. They will immediately say, and here's my sales engineer. And they go back in the corner and look at the text, the sports scores and whatever. We have to be very good at not giving control overtly. Please look at my previous videos about overt, covert, and kind of on the sly power and how you give and get power. We have to not let them do that. So even when it comes to the meeting itself, we have to go with the flow, qualified yeses, and look for what they say they want, what we've now revealed through questions, and what now we figured out, and we can even change on the fly, right? If you're good, you can change in the middle of a sentence. So when you go into these calls, are you, and I think I covered this in another, so basically, I'm going to put it like this. Talking, you, them, and I know talking's general, I get it, equals 100%, right? So what's it going to be? Back to what I just said. The reps will say, oh, let them do all the talking. Well, they're not going to talk. Sorry, it's just the way it is. And you have to prod them. So when we talk about discovered, it's people are only going to be so forward with you depending on the company that they have. So for example, and I talked about this again, I hate to go over this again, but if you're talking to someone whose underling is there, somebody that looks up to them, they're not going to admit to not knowing anything. So please don't pressure them to, or do you remember what this means? Don't do that. That really makes people awkward. But offline, talking to that person one-on-one, they'll be like, no, what's that mean? And, oh, it means this and this. And here's why I think it's going to be great for you guys. And they're like, oh, okay. Don't embarrass people. Don't put them in the middle. So when it comes to you and them, I don't know what the percentage is here. You might say, oh, this demo is going to take 45 minutes, and that's going to be 75% me. Let's give them a little room to talk. Best meetings I've ever had are ones where I learned way more than I thought there was to learn. And why? Has to do with IFS. It's basically giving somebody room. Let's put it that way. You have to, if you think of it like a stage, right? You have to give them room on the stage to do their thing. If you're filling the stage with talk and demos, whatever, guess what? They'll politely sit there and they'll watch everything, and then they'll just say, bye, we'll never see you again. They know they can't work with you. Okay, enough of a tangent. Declared, discovered, deduced. You can rearrange those if it's easier to remember. We're going to do that on both. So, the meeting event planner, we take notes like who's going to talk more, who's going to do whatever. All that is laid out in the meeting event planner. VP of sales goes over it. He says, okay, this looks good. No, you got to promote this. I'm getting, talked to about promoting this product. Be sure to work that in. Oh, by the way, we have this other leave behind that we want you to do on your way. Great. So we're now moving on to the describe phase, which is step one, if you will. So they kind of line up pretty well. Step 0, step 1. They line up really well with the 5 Ds. So, step 1, stage 1, whatever you want to call it. I'm not picky. My methodologies are about what they are, not what you call them. So, step 1 is requirements. Why? Because we're in the describe D. So describe, that's interesting. Who is describing what? Are you describing? You, right there, you. Are you describing what you do? Are they describing what they want? Are they reacting to what they see? Well, let's talk about that. Basically, the way the meeting's going to go, because regardless of how it pans out, you are expected to be the information provider, teach them and give them information in order to help them make their decision that they didn't have before. That's how they look at you. Okay? So they see it as learn. They don't care about your product. They want to learn how they're going to solve their problem. Sorry, it's a big secret, but that's just the way it is. They're not spending an hour of multiple people's time repeatedly just so they can entertain themselves by looking at your wonderful PowerPoints and your list of logos on a back page of reference accounts and marquees. No, they're there to learn something. They want to know, okay, we do shoes, automotive, construction, whatever it is. You guys do XYZ software. Okay, great. I'd like to know more about what I can do with that kind of software by listening to your dog and pony. So don't think that this is a give and get. This is everybody's shuffling around, right? Everybody wants to get something out of this. And you ask the reps, right? What do they want? Well, it's pretty easy what they want. They want the reps, you can say that's us, but not all of us. They're after the deal. They just want it to close. So they're looking for those overlaps, and their ears always perk up, that have to do with money. Why? Because that's how they're incented. That's their comp plan. We've talked about that. It's okay. If you compensate somebody to go for low-hanging fruit and quick sales, don't fault them for doing it. So the reps are looking for money. So let's talk about how this would happen, and I'll get to the rest of this in a second. Basically speaking, there are a couple steps here to what we're going to do. The first is, and I guess I'll just kind of say this whichever way. Let's talk about very high level. It's what I call formalities, intros, things like that. Then we have, what do you want to call it? An overview or an agenda, or I don't know, schedule. We're going to go for X amount. We're going to be here. We'll take a break then, whatever. If it's only going to be an hour, don't worry about it. After that, take 10s because they're going to turn into 15s, but be prepared for 15. You know that, right? Every 45 minutes to an hour. I like to start every hour. So I wait until 10 till, and then that's when I say, okay, take your 10. But I know it's going to go into 15. Don't ever tell them the truth. Always shave 5 minutes off. If you've done this for any length of time, you know why. The next part is going to be a loop. The stuff, right? So you're going to have more than one stuff, right? So for 1 to X, you're going to go through and introduce what it is you're doing. you're going to then say, well, I'm going to say what it is. Just trying to think of a great way to put this. What, like show, talk, discuss. And I even have fun with exercises. Now, I'm not going to call them games because people get all weird about it. But I've done games where I've tried to illustrate a point, especially at trade shows, where I get the whole audience going in either a breakout or in the whole room. And I'll do things like I remember doing networking, trying to explain a certain aspect of networking when I was working for Sprint. And I had people go down the row way over to the left of the room. So like imagine that's the, the front where the presenters are. And I had people give everybody in the left row, whatever you want to call it, stage right, a piece of paper. And that person that handed it to them, all of them said the same thing. They said, this is a blank. And it was a word, like it wasn't about networking. It was all about a word. They would say it's a this. And then they wouldn't tell anybody else. They would just tell them, says, this paper represents this. And what they do is each person hands to the one to their left, right? Stage, whatever. They hand that piece of paper to them and they say, describe in 1 or 2 words or 3 max this thing. And they would say, it's a something, but they would use whatever they were told and they would say, describe it, not using those words. And the next person, so you have this piece of paper that's going down each column of each row, and each column, if you want to call it that, is writing down a different description, 1, 2, or 3 words of this thing, this word that you started out with. I'm sorry if this is taking too long. At the end, these guys come around and they grab all these pieces of paper and they bring them up. Now, everybody was told the same thing. So nobody in the audience knows what these people were told. So you basically grab them and you figure out a couple of them that are good and you circle them and you tell the audience, you say, okay, here's a couple of things we were told. Here's what other people said, because you don't kibitz. And can anybody guess what the real thing was, what it started? And of course, I think there's probably a parlor trick like that or some sort of game or, hot lava. I'm not sure from whatever. Anyway, I do that it really gets a big laugh and people understand error correction and you can really have fun with it. So it can be exercises. Don't discount the fact that it can be fun. This is not supposed to be boring and awful and people have to endure it. When you show, when you relate, when you ask questions, when you do it interactively, put yourself in their shoes, okay? All I'm going to say is this one little bullet. I'm not going to go crazy. Just put yourself in their position. Like, how much would it take at this point for you to fall asleep, right? You cannot make it boring. I do eye contact. I ask specific questions. Hey, Jane, how would you handle something like this? Would you this or this? I never give them fill in the blanks because they don't like being put in the spot. I say, would you run away or would you face them or what would you do? And she's, well, that's right, because that would make you, make people feel good, right? Empower them. The next is out of this cycle is you basically ask. Okay, so we're asking questions. We're doing how does this, and interactively, you can work this in too, but basically a huge step in each thing that we're repeating through here is feedback. Now, I don't care if does this sound about right? It's a sales meeting. Let's face it. We're trying to sell something, right? Does this sound about right to you? Is this about what you're looking for? Is this, are we on target with this? And be prepared and stage your things, the stuff that you're going to talk about, in such a way that you go from broad to specific. Because if you start out very specific and you're wrong, you're going to have a lot of explaining and you've just shot your credibility in the foot. Now you can't come back from that lack of credibility. We want credibility to continue to go up over time. Okay? We don't want to start out with an assumption of high credibility, go low, and then somehow try to figure out how to recover it. Right? If somebody loses your trust right off the bat, they say a word wrong, they say something wrong. I watched a video, swear to God, it's on YouTube. Earl, somebody called this acronym an Earl, like pronounced EARL, Earl. Now, immediately when that person said that, that's all I could think about, right? Your credibility is shot with me. All I could think about was Earl. It's like people who call this a GIF. Drives you crazy. So their credibility down the tube. I really didn't even think they were credible in what they were talking about from then on. Look for it. It's actually, you can find it. It's actually about microprocessor development, was assembler and C. Anyway, really interesting about setting up software. So in these meetings that we're doing, don't be afraid to really stress on this. And the best advice I ever got, which is so bizarre, is to wait. Now remember, this meeting, because I'm just going straight into the meeting high level, this meeting can be in person. It might be remote. You might be split. You got some people online, some people who are there. Everybody could be offline. It could be... what's the thing I'm thinking about? Anyway, everybody there, nobody there, half and half. Okay, you get the idea, right? You might also be in a situation where you ask something and you're stonewalled. People, crickets, right? So the best advice I ever got was wait for an answer. And you can sit there. You are allowed to not say shit. You are allowed to wait and look at somebody and wait for the answer. Now, we're showmen. We're used to always talking. Listen to me, I won't stop. I can't even breathe, right? I'm from New England. Very difficult to all of a sudden stop and go, what do you think, Mrs. Smith? Any questions? How are we doing on this? Is this roughly what you expected to see today? And wait. Just wait. You don't have to fill these voids. If you're there and your meeting event planner says you're there to get this and that information, it's okay. You can wait for that information. Do not force it. Without this feedback, you can't set up your next thing that you're going to talk about in this list. Go from general or wide to more specific. That's the way it goes. You have to do it that way. I told you one reason why. That should be enough. After this stuff is all done, you'd have like your, what are we going to call it? Your, I won't say your host. Let's call it that. Your host would say, okay, let's, how did we do? How were things? The host comes back in. We're doing just a basic debrief. Do we touch all the points? And the most important step is the next steps. Now, the meeting event planner will list what we thought the next steps would be. Now, by we, I mean AM, account management. We thought the next steps at the end of this meeting would be this. But remember, we just learned a lot. We had our 3Ds here, right? They declared, we discovered, and because we're smart in the brain, we deduced. But you know what? You don't have to go home and get in your undies to figure this stuff out. You can do it on the fly, and you can do it adjusting what you have and the 3x5s that you've given out to folks. Adjust the plan. Hey, we think they want this, but you know what? At the end of the call, or the meeting, we now think they want this over here. Pretty important. So these are the basic steps of the meeting. I'm not going to tell you how to demo, how to do whatever. I went over my last two videos pretty well. the philosophy of demos. I really want to do a real deal, but I'm waiting for one of you person right there. I'm waiting for you to tell me what kind of opportunity, what size company, what software and or services, what are we going to sell? I'd really like to take something that I've done everything under the sun. I'd love to take something from your own experiences, real world, something you have to do, something coming up, something you just did. And you're like, well, how would you approach it? How, let's really dissect this thing and see how we did. Give me an idea of what you think would be the best use of your time to go through and say, we're going to make a mock sales call. We're going to have a mock company. We're going to have a mock product, our mock company, and we're going to go ahead and actually do the materials required to sell our thing. What would they look like? How would I approach it, me, versus how you approached it? Teach me something. Show me something I haven't seen before. How do you think I learned all this? By being observant, okay? I wasn't born with it. I saw countless people do things wrong and plucked out that little pearl of something I thought they did right and constructed all my methodologies by doing that. So yes, what you see is 99% garbage. You can't use it. But like I always say, there is nothing in a meeting, nothing in a call, nothing in any kind of interaction, no matter how bad you think it went, that you can't learn from. So you'll have a horrible experience, let's say. It was a rotten sales call. Oh, it's quiet. I died like a comic dies on stage. Like, okay. What did you learn from that? Oh, nothing. It was total wash. Bullshit. You learned something. Take something away from everything that you do. You didn't get along with somebody. It worked really well. It did whatever. This worked, that didn't work. Why? Why didn't it work? Oh, well, I had to show him a feature, but I had to apologize the whole time because the feature didn't do what I said it would. So I ended up filling up the whole time of the meeting apologizing. Like, that's a good thing. So let's just focus on each stage. We have the view of the debrief, the assignee asking for validation. What does a prospect think? I always have a timer because we haven't talked about roles. But what I will tell you, because I want to make this as brief as I can, is no laughing. I have the role of host, the role of rep. Sometimes they're the same. Reps aren't always the best for this. Depends on your guy or girl, okay? You have the talent. I'm just going to call it that because it's whoever is demonstrating or discussing or showing or exercises, etc. It could be using content that they gave us, right? Our stuff in your software, that kind of thing. And then there's the timer. I got to say, this is probably the most important person. I haven't talked about the roles and stuff here, but I will tell you from the real world, nobody pays attention to the clock. It's kind of like those award shows, right? Where the microphone starts dropping through the floor. They do that because nobody, I'm going to take 30 seconds and I'm going to do this. Time is really flexible when it comes to being in front of people. You say, well, I practiced it and it takes me 10 or 15 seconds to do my elevator pitch. And yeah, well, okay, go in an elevator now and try it. Or give it to somebody who's never seen it. Or give it to somebody who matters, not your cat. How long did it take? Not the same. Right? It seemed like it was only 10 seconds. It was a minute, okay? So you have to respect the fact that your meeting event planner keeps you on time and says how much time we have for these based on the assumed, declared, or discovered time frame that you have, leaving enough for this next steps and debrief. Because tell you the truth, without saying how long anything is, because I've been on a marathon call. In Japan, I was on one for 8 hours. We were at this place. And I generally like to leave 25% time for this. But if you're going for 8 hours, you can't just have 2 hours of sitting there staring at each other. They're going to feel like they're getting ripped off. So it could be free flow. It could be whatever, but when it comes to big things, I like going for your typical hour. I like going for the period of, here to here, from 12 to 9 on the, Mickey's little hand or big hand. I love leaving this room because everybody likes a meeting that ends early. Everybody. Now, the reps might want to say, well, I'm not going to leave until they say they're going to sign. Actually, in most cases, if you have a methodology and you're working for a company that's got its shit together, the rep isn't actually in charge of these sales meetings. And honestly, they shouldn't be. A sales rep, and I'm not saying that there aren't capable sales reps. Don't go crazy. What I'm talking about is reps are single-minded. I'm trying to impress that fact upon you. This means that anything else, the art of the deal is lost on them. Here's the pen, sign now. That's their mentality. How can I don't care if they only want half of what we planned on giving them, just get them to sign something. That's not always the best thing to do. And so be mindful of putting your reps in charge, because they by default will try to be in charge and they'll tell you what to do and they'll blame you for everything. This is blame management. Talked about it. Sorry. Real world here. We're talking about being a rock star, not going off a PowerPoint. If people are just giving you these lovely, fluffy PowerPoints and they're saying, oh, you should do this and your rep is wonderful and this is that, and they're not giving you real world experience like I am of what really happens, take that with a grain of salt. Take what you can from it. It's not real world. That's not what really happens. I've been doing this over 20 years. I'll tell you exactly how it really is, because I've worked in a variety of different kinds of verticals and software all around the world. And so I know how it really goes out there. So yeah, go for those PowerPoints, the folks out there giving you those great things, far out. Me, I'm a little bit more down to earth. I tell it the way it is. I don't want you coming back, saying, hey, Pat, you snowed me. What's this bullshit? You should have told me the truth. So, and it gives my book validity when it comes out that I am a straight shooter and I'll tell you the truth. Why? Because I have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Why wouldn't I? So this is the deal for step 1 in our 5 Ds, right? The second or first D, depending on which way you look at it, of the sales meeting. How do you present? How do you do an agenda? Come on. You telling me you're just now learning about sales engineering and you have no idea how to schedule a call? I'll show you how to do a meeting event planner. I'll show you how to do a percent likelihood of closing worksheet, an opportunity worksheet, whatever. I've called it different things in my portfolios. But there's some things that I do need to explain, or at least remind you of in a way that I'm used to. So there you go. I can dive into any of these. I didn't want to dwell too much about declaring, discovering, and deducing. Did I have any notes over here? I had some old notes I was trying to put this in my head. I ended up not using any of this, but info from prospect to scout, demonstrate. Be flexible. Don't be afraid to add one in here in the middle. Scrap the rest, right? If your intelligence told you this is what you're going to be doing and you found out it was all wrong, don't go, can we come back? Can we do, no. Like I've always said, one of my mantras is, you never want to be in a call where somebody says on your team, well, that's a great question. We'll have to get back to you on that. No, always answer every question about your stuff, but it's okay to have outstanding questions, information, deliverables, artifacts coming from their side. You should always be prepared to answer any question, no matter what and that's why sales engineers are here, right? When we have very technical things to sell, the rep isn't going to know about them. They're not going to know how they work and the menus. They've probably never even used the software. They're just trying to get the calls and get the money. So nobody does everything. The timer, that's the person that says, hey, you got 5 minutes left. To meet the schedule, to get all the things done. Pat, you got 5 minutes. Oh, okay. Thanks, Dave. That is essential, because you don't want to go to these little things that help you from the real world. If you just have somebody go, okay, time's up, and you're in the middle of something that somebody's asked you for, they're like, okay, this is all wonderful there, Mr. Trainer, but I want you to go ahead and explain this to me. And I go, and then somebody goes, sorry, time's up. And you have to respect everybody else's time. How does that make you look, right? That makes you look pretty darn bad. So always have a timer. Somebody's ready to give you the 5 minute and the 0 minute. I'll leave the talent be talent. You guys figure all that out. It doesn't have to be the same person. I think the most useful things for me to do from here, talking about a sales meeting, is to get you another lecture talking about these two tools here, the meeting event planner and the worksheet, the present likelihood of closing, because these are fabulous qualification tools, and really 99% of sales is qualifying. So there you go. I'm going to leave it at this. It's been long enough, and everybody's been really patient, but it is a gigantic part of what we do, qualification, including meetings, including the things we do in step 0 to prepare for me, even to get the right meeting, cut bait, or should we even be at this meeting? All these things that help you are from the real world. This isn't, try hard, go do whatever. I'm giving you things that help you in the trenches, because I've learned all of it. I've thrown away the garbage, and this is what's left. Things I've had to create or things I've kind of tacked onto. So I need your feedback. I want to find out what you think we should do for an opportunity, and we'll use the tools that I'll do in the next 1 or 2 videos to do that opportunity, right? We'll take a very basic rudimentary meeting event planner. I'm not going to go through all the time to make a whole new one. I'll show you some pictures of a few that I've done, some PDFs in my portfolio. But for sales managers, I have a separate portfolio just for sales management to show what I can do. And the tools that we create as sales engineers should be there, because really, who else is going to help the sales executives, right? Nobody. So the VPs and stuff, they really need us quite a bit. Again, we're talking about being a rock star, not just showing up to work. You want to show up for work and get paid? Join the military. It's great for that. Trust me. That's it. And we will talk to you next time. But I really appreciate you sticking through. I'm looking forward to your information. And remember, if you're a sales engineer, a sales engineering manager, somebody involved in this whole thing that we talk about on this channel, please get a hold of me. It's not hard. And private message or whatever else is available. I'm really interested in anybody who's interested in exchange for a free copy of the book, having their company or themselves shown in a favorable light, and adding some color and some experience from the field as to what they've learned, what is good, what is bad, what's worked for them. So do be sure to get a hold of me. And that's it. Until next time, folks, thanks very much.